Should the 49ers have kept Trey Lance? Here's why I ask. When they traded him last year, it made sense. They'd signed Sam Darnold. That was the backup quarterback they wanted. He's gone. Now he's going to compete to be the starter with the Vikings, and the backups for Brock Purdy are Josh Dobbs, who I think had 24 turnovers last year, and Brandon Allen, who is good in the room, but not necessarily on the field. And they could have had Lance. Lance is still like 23 years old, 24 years old. The reason that they got rid of him is now on the Vikings. I don't know. What do you think?
I want to say that's a heck of an interesting question.
Thanks.
I think off the cuff, because you sprung this on me, I would have kept him. And I'm going to say why. I think he's a better player than Joshua Dobbs. I do. What's more, he's sufficiently different from Brock Purdy that it could have given other teams problems. So I agree with you. I think he would be a better backup right now than Joshua Dobbs would be. Joshua Dobbs is like, he's the relief pitcher you bring in in the 8th inning when you're down 10-0. He's kind of that, the low man on the staff. Okay, which brings me to another point. Why did they get rid of Trey Lance?
Right. Okay,
That's
so let's
the
talk about
underlying question.
Let's talk about that for a second. What they wanted people to believe is they just liked Sam Darnold better. Maybe, but I think what they liked is that no one cares about Sam Darnold and no one would talk about Sam Darnold. And they felt that Trey Lance was a distraction, but it was a distraction that they created, that they could have managed. And now it's like, well, okay, you got a boring backup quarterback unit, but it's not necessarily that good.
Yeah. So here's what I'm saying. I'm saying the reason, my interpretation, I believe the reason the Niners got rid of Trey Lance had nothing to do with football.
That's correct.
It had to do with image.
Yes.
That people, i.e. the media and fans, were talking too much about the backup quarterback and not really about the starter or the rest of the team. And they wanted to cool down the vibe.
Yes.
So they got rid of him for the reason of temperature and public image, not because the kid had failed, because he'd never had a chance to fail or succeed. So I think they got rid of him for the wrong reason.
Right.
And if they had kept him, I think the quarterback position would be stronger now. No knock on Joshua Dobbs, who I like, but I don't think is as good, nor clearly does he have the potential of Trey Lance. So I'll even phrase it a different way, Iggy. And I'm really glad you brought this up. I'd phrase it a different way. I'd say the reason the Niners got rid of Trey Lance was they were weak.
Yeah. I would have to agree with that. Absolutely. And short-sighted. It's like, okay, well, we don't really want this distraction that we created. So we'll trade him for a 4th-round pick, which isn't much. And then we'll sign Sam Darnold to a 1-year deal, and that'll be that. Okay, but what about next year? He's gone. And now your backup quarterback is Josh Dobbs. Do you really like Josh Dobbs better than Trey Lance? I doubt it. So what did you really get? You got a 4th-round pick and Josh Dobbs. Probably should have just managed the narrative a little bit better. You could have handled that. I mean, that's what PR people for.
And that's what John Lynch is for.
Yeah. Work it out. But it would be because they're one play away from Josh Dobbs starting for them. You'd much rather that be Trey Lance.
Iggy, I said why I thought they traded Trey Lance. Why do you think they traded him?
I agree. I mean, I covered training camp last year. He was not worse than Sam Darnold. It was quite close. There were days where Darnold was better. There were days where Lance was better. When you totaled up their stats, it was quite close. But then once they traded Lance, Kyle Shanahan said it was clear from all the way back from the joint practices that Darnold had separated himself, it wasn't clear to anyone who covered those practices. It was not clear. So it must have been something other than football. I totally agree with you.
Yes, and it was image and the temperature of the room.
If you remember his final preseason game, he led a comeback. He had like drive after drive where he got better and better and better, and then they traded him. And after he had that game, he came up to me in the locker room and said, "Grant, thank you," or something. But it was pretty much, "I'm never going to see you again." And I appreciate what you've tried to do.
But no, let's linger over that for a minute. He said, he did say something like, "Grant, thank you," or "Thanks for your support," or something.
Yeah, something like
but
that.
He didn't stop and say it.
No.
He did it in a whisper.
Under his breath.
And he walked under his breath because he knew how volatile the whole situation was. And he knew how volatile they look at you. Yeah. And he didn't want to be seen talking to you. So he sort of did it out of the side of his mouth. Yeah. That just shows.
Talking to the enemy.
That just shows how vulnerable he felt. And they got rid of him shortly after that.
Yeah. And so what's interesting about Trey Lance, people don't think about him very much anymore, but he's with the Cowboys. And there's been rumors the last few days that the Cowboys could trade Dak Prescott to the Raiders, who have no idea what they're doing ever. So that would kind of make sense. And that could happen in the next few weeks before the draft, which would mean that Trey Lance would be one step closer to being a starting quarterback. And it would be really interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to him. We still don't know. And a lot of people have written him off. He's entering his 4th year in the league. Jordan Love just broke out. Jordan Love was on the bench for 3 years, started in his 4th year, played well. I'm not saying that Trey Lance is the next Jordan Love, but we'll freaking find out. It's going to be interesting.
Boy, this is a good topic. I'm glad you did it.
Yeah, they're not past him yet. That's still a big skeleton in their closet. And if Brock Purdy gets hurt and they have to actually start one of those two backups and they can't win with him, this is going to come right back in their faces. Pause.
Iggy, when Trey Lance ran that final drive, didn't some of the players run down the field to congratulate him?
Yes, they did. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel.
Deebo? Yeah.
Yes. Didn't they get, wasn't there like a 15-yard penalty because players ran off the sideline? Yes.
Yeah. Because they were that excited for him.
Mm-hmm.
So, and let me just say, another reason they might have gotten rid of him, there might have been a schism in the locker room.
Right. Good point.
Might have been a schism in the locker room.
Yeah.
There might have been two factions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Absolutely.
Because those two players, as I recall, ran down and celebrated he had done so well. Yeah. And somebody might have thought, we got to get it. This is no good for the team.
Yeah.
But you know what?
Celebrate Sam Darnold leading a drive. Sorry.
Yeah. But you know what? They could have managed that. And I do agree with you. I think that they are not as strong with Joshua Dobbs. And I don't want to be seen as putting down Joshua Dobbs because he can do certain things, but I don't think he's as gifted or has the future that Trey Lance has.
Yeah, this isn't about Dobbs. This is about the Niners, and it's about sort of arrogance. Like they thought they could make a non-football decision for a football. I mean, it's like we're so good. Brock Purdy's so good. Who cares who our backup quarterback is? Let's get rid of Trey Lance. And okay, well, let's see you keep Brock Purdy healthy for multiple seasons, and let's see Josh Dobbs be. It was a very risky thing, and they were pretty cavalier about it. Like, we don't need him anymore.
Iggy, do you actually think there's a chance that Dak Prescott goes to Las Vegas?
I do think there's a chance. I think the Cowboys have figured out that they're not going anywhere with Dak Prescott, and the Raiders aren't going anywhere with anyone. And so I think they would probably like to have a quarterback people have heard of. And I think the Cowboys might like to move on.
Who would start for the Cowboys?
Maybe Trey Lance. They also have a guy, Cooper Rush, and there's a draft.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So that'd be interesting.